Let's take you live to Tasmania and speak to our reporters on the ground. Andrea Crothers is at Tasmania's famous tally room, and Danica DiGiorgio in the seat of Clark for us this evening. Andrea, first to you. The tally room has somewhat become outdated on election nights elsewhere around the nation, but Tasmania's persist with tradition. What can we expect there tonight?
Well, Kieran, this is the last place you can see this form of democracy play out on election night. The place where you not just see the media, you not just see politicians from many different parties all in the one room, but also members of the public. They're invited too. Tonight is no different, although it will be capped due to COVID restrictions. So tonight, Labor, they're vying to do the one thing that no other opposition has done since the pandemic began, and that's topple an incumbent government. Now, what they've been doing to try and get there is to get voters to focus on the last 7 years, not the last 12 months and the government's pandemic performance. They're promising a massive healthcare spend to fix what really has been a crisis for some time here and what's been quite a fractured system, particularly around elective surgery wait times. Housing, a huge spend there as well, particularly around that social housing, those wait lists which have blown out, and building more houses here on the ground, also pushing with those hot button issues as well of education. So Labor, that's what they're hoping. Will it be enough? Well, we'll have to see how tonight goes. But if Labor doesn't make it over the line tonight, well, this will be the second time that leader Rebecca White has led the party to a loss, but she's refused to weigh in on whether then she'd step down.
I'm campaigning to win, and I've said that all along. My focus has only been on winning. It's on winning the seats we need to win government, and on making sure that we change from a Liberal government to a Labor government. I'm not contemplating what happens post 6 p.m. tonight, except a Labor victory.
She was quite confident today, but all of that, of course, will be quite difficult given that she too has vowed not to lead in minority.
Andrea, appreciate it. Talk to you soon. And Danica, you followed the Premier to the state's north today as he voted in his electorate of Bass. There's expectation he'll win at least 2 quotas on his own there in the northeast. Talk us through his final message to voters.
Well, the message from Peter Gutwein today, Kieran, was clear. Vote in Liberals, but vote in a majority government. That's been the message he's been saying to voters for the last week because, as we know, he said that in the event that the Liberals do get re-elected tonight, he will not be leader if it's in minority. Now, he did spend the day in his electorate of Bass, but what we have really seen from the Premier over the last few weeks, he's been buoyed by the popularity of his strong COVID policies. In fact, Tasmania was the first state to close its borders when the pandemic hit, and calling this snap election 12 months ahead of schedule. He's hoping to keep that popularity going that we saw from other incumbent premiers like Mark McGowan and Anastasia Palaszczuk recently. Last 12 months has been big for the state with COVID, but underlying that, a number of healthcare issues. I'll take you through some of the big ticket items for the Liberal Party now. Firstly, $156 million for surgery wait times, $315 million for social housing, about $98 million TAFE and teachers, and over $13 million for Tasmania's jobs. But it's a big political gamble for Peter Gutwein tonight. Here's what he said about it earlier today.
One thing that I'm very clear in my mind about is that together with Tasmanians, we've worked hard over the last 12 to 15 months to make Tasmania safe, to ensure that we could rebuild our economy. Tasmanians are now back in work. People are positive. There is confidence in our community. The risk is that we go back into minority government.
Interesting to note, Kieran, Scott Morrison was due to campaign alongside Peter Gutwein, but couldn't as he'd visited COVID-plagued Western Australia at the moment. Peter Gutwein saying, "I don't need Scott Morrison to hold my hand."